I can get the colonel from having old home week, we'll get started. He's still ignoring us. His hearing's gone, I think. Well, you can't be. It could never reach that level of sucking up, I imagine. Folks, welcome to our appropriations hearing for 2016 budget for public safety. Thank all of you for being here, and thank you for what you do. I'm Alex Atwood. I'm the chair. Got a great committee here, but I would ask everyone, I would plead for brevity. We have about 8 agencies to go through, and we've got 2 hours to do it, so I would ask the members of the committee also to be very focused in their questioning. So I think the first up is my friends with the GBI. Glad to meet you, Director. I'm glad to see you.
I can perfect executive summary brevity. I've never heard that. We're not talking about GCIC rules this time. Speaking from page 56 of the House tracking sheet, I'd like to highlight 3 budget issues that are in the governor's budget recommendations. And the first one is item 29.3, which is to increase the funds for personal services for the GBI medical examiners. These are the board-certified forensic pathologists who do the autopsy. And we've asked in the governor's budget, there's $480,000, and this would give our doctors on an average of 12% pay increase, which is necessary to continue the retention of the doctors we have on staff and to recruit new doctors. Currently have 2 vacancies, and that we can tolerate backlogs in some part of the crime lab, but not in the medical examiner's office. So we ask your favorable consideration of the pay increase for the medical examiners. Yes,
about
sir.
A 12% increase?
About a 12% increase.
I believe last time for the amended budget, you testified that you were having a very difficult time retaining them.
Yes, sir. We've lost 2 doctors who have 2 vacancies now. We had been trying to recruit our 15th doctor. The legislature provided funding for us last year, and we have been unable to fill that position based on the base salary that currently exists. With the pay increase, it will make us competitive for hiring doctors who are just entering the field and have completed all of their internships and the medical training.
Refresh my memory, I think the salary was about 138 to 100 and tapped out about 155 or so. Was that correct?
Yes, sir. You have a good memory.
All right. Thank you.
The second item that I'd ask your favorable consideration for is an expansion of the GBI headquarters morgue, and this includes the design and the construction for the morgue expansion, and that's $6.68 million in bond funds. We need to dramatically increase our capacity for handling the bodies that come into our headquarters morgue, which is where all of our doctors except for 4 are stationed at. We've had situations where we've come in on a Monday morning and been an active weekend in the crime world, and we have more bodies in the morgue than we have space for. So this would give us a 100-bed capacity, 100-table capacity, 50 in, 50 out, and help us keep the flow of the workflow going and have the body stored with dignity. The other item is item 50.2.3, which is a design funds for a new crime laboratory in Savannah. Our current laboratory there was built in 1986. It is grossly outdated. We do not have sufficient space there for the current employees. We need to increase the staffing level in Savannah because of the growth in that area there, and this would lay the groundwork for, and this is also bond money, for the design for a new crime laboratory in Savannah, and then we would come back later after the design. We know the specific cost to construct a facility. That the laboratory there now has 22 scientists. We need to increase that by another 10 scientists at some point to handle the workload that is coming into the Savannah area. With that, sir, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
If I could recess for about 5 minutes, I'll be right back. We had a little bit of a minor emergency we had to take care of. The next up would be the Office of Highway Safety. And welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Harris Blackwood. I'm Director of the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. We are not asking for any increases, but I do want to tell you about a couple things that are happening very quickly. We are estimating that our revenues that will come in from a surcharge on DUI fines that we fund the Georgia Drivers Education Commission will be about $2.9 million this year. This is the first year that we are doing that now, and we hope to have students in seats by about May of this year. It's taking us a little while to get it going. The commission was reconstituted in July, and we're now moving ahead with that. And we hope to increase that program even more. It has a sunset provision for next fiscal year, the end of 16, and we are looking for that to be a good program. We're doing it a little differently this year. We're giving scholarships. We're working with our technical college system, and we're going to pay for students to go to classes. We have money this year for about 5,000 students if they choose to do so in this current fiscal year, and we'll have even more next year. We had to get a lot of things set up, get some equipment out there, and we're going to be ready to roll in this fiscal year. Our only increases are the increases the governor asked for in the insurance and for the 1%. And that's all we have, sir.
Could you give me a page number where you are?
71.
Okay.
38, 1, 2, and 3.
In the governor's budget.
In your tracking document, I
It
believe.
would be section 38 here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. $38.8, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
38, 1. Sir? Okay.
And if everyone could kind of do that when they come up, I would appreciate it.
I apologize,
It makes it
sir.
a little bit easier for us to follow. Any questions from the committee? If you could, too, just for the chair, could you discuss Joshua's laws with us, and how you're handling that?
Yes, sir. That is the Georgia Drivers Education Commission, and that's the biggest part of our state money, and that comes from a surcharge on DUI fines, and we're anticipating a revenue of about $2.9 million in the current fiscal year and as well for next year. And we're going to be doing that in a form of a scholarship rather than trying to pay for operations and buying cars and that sort of thing. We're going to pay the technical colleges a tuition for those students. We're in the process of negotiating that right now, and we'll have those classes beginning as soon as school is over with. Most students take driver's training now in the summertime.
Okay.
We're very encouraged by that. The other thing, and let me share this with you very quickly, Mr. Chairman, if I may. One element of this that we're doing is we're working with Georgia Southern University, and we're going to ask these students in exchange for taking this scholarship that they will sign and let us look at their driving record for 10 years. We're going to see if driver's training is working as well as we think it is. It is the first time in the country that that's happened, and we're very encouraged by that. We hope that it will either show us that we hope that it shows us that it is working, and if it doesn't, it'll show us the changes we need to make.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Police Officer Standards and Training, post.
Don't talk about that brevity stuff
Mr.
now.
Vance, you have a lot more flexibility than I could ever attempt to.
It'll be a Bengay night, Mr. Chairman.
I can't top that. Go ahead, sir.
Page 71 of 101, 38.9, Peace Officer Standards and Training, and I'm Ken Vance, the director. Under the governor's budget, 38.9.1, 2, and 3 are those adjustments that y'all normally make on an annual basis. There are 4 items, Mr. Chairman, in the committee that we hope y'all will, for once, please act favorably on. Increased funds for personal services and operating expenses for a hearing officer. That's 38.9. 38.9.5 is for an investigator. This is really to replace an investigator we lost in budget cuts before. Increased funds on 38.9.6 for 2 certification specialists. As you know, those officers that went to the academy beginning in January 1st, 2012 will recertify in 4 years. That'll start in 2016, and this will give us the people to handle that process that will begin really in November of 15, but we have a great deal amount of training that we have to do for those people in order to get them ready.
For the members of the committee, and just take a few minutes, could you explain the certification program for our police officers? Because it's pretty interesting, I think.
Well, thank you. Let me slow down now. Several years ago, back in 2008, we went in front of police officers around the state of Georgia, law enforcement officers, sheriff's deputies, GBI, State Patrol, Port Authority, and so forth, and we broached this idea of a recertification process wherein they would take courses from those, a group of courses from those proposed by Post over a 4-year period that would allow them to get recertified. We talked to 500 street officers, nobody above a sergeant. And to a person, they all said this would be a good deal because this will help us when we get on the stand in court and say, yes, we may have been certified in 2012, but we recertified by taking these additional courses as part of our annual training to allow us to be recertified in 2016. In talking to judges about this, Mr. Chairman, they were to a person. We met with the Superior Court judges, and they were to a person congratulatory of our efforts in this area. The state passed this and put it into law, and all we're doing here is trying to get our situation ready to accomplish what has already been accomplished by the state of Georgia in allowing this to happen.
Question I see on 38.94, looks like for the one hearing officer it's roughly 82,000, and on 38.95 for one investigator it's around 83,000. But on 38.96 we're talking about 2 people, it's at 87. What's
Okay, those first 2 people, sir, will be certified, post-certified people. In 38.9.6, these will be mostly clerical specialists that will review this paperwork and pass it on up through that certification chain. Good question. Good one.
Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The funds you've asked for in 38, 94, 95, and 96, the numbers you've given us there, and I think Representative Hightower just mentioned them, this is including all benefits, correct?
Benefits, and with the investigator, there's the car, the gun, the computer, the ancillary things that go along with that job.
And that's included with your numbers here?
Yes, sir.
The 87, 83,
Yes,
and
sir.
82?
We've met with OPB early in the year and went over all that, and this is OPB's done great by us this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
That's all I have, unless y'all have some more questions. And please pass this one. This is the best one we've had since I've been around for 7 years.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Mr.
what you
Chairman.
do.
Thank you, committee.
And I think our newest director, the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, one of my favorite places.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman,
Good
other
afternoon.
members of the committee. We are on page 71 of 101, 3810. And what I would like to discuss today is not on the line item. Due to my recent appointment, the budgetary process had already been complete as far as submitting things to the governor's budget. Once I arrived at the training center, within the first month of my arrival, I received 3 resignation letters from instructors. All the resignation letters were because of low salary. Upon further investigation and looking into that matter, I submitted a request to the governor's office and to OPB about a proposed increase. Again, I'm working with the governor's office and OPB. It has not been approved yet, but I went that approach since the budget had already been submitted and completed. What I found is that with the majority of instructors that we have, 56 of them have a tenure of less than 2 years. And as an instructor for the training center, we're not wanting to hire someone that is directly out of the academy to instruct an officer that's been on the road for 10 or 15 years. We're wanting a veteran that's got 10 or 15 years of experience, that's already vested and taken the initiative to get some instructor certifications upon themselves. The problem that I've noticed is we hire someone with 1 or 2 years of experience. We send them through additional training to obtain their instructor certifications, basic instructor and special certifications. They're hired by another agency at a substantial amount of money to become their training officer, so they leave. Also, with FLETC being inside Georgia, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, we cannot compete with those salaries, so we've had several people leave and go to that department as well. But the problem we're running into is we're lowering our standards on who we hire because the salary is so low for that. It is an entry-level position as far as OPB is concerned, getting them in, but we don't need to hire an entry-level person. We need somebody that has the skill and the experience to go there, excuse me, to go and instruct at the training center. And these officers that they're instructing and teaching, from firefighters, EMT to police officers, are coming back to your community. And the end results is ending up in your community.
I know it used to be to have a certification with, as a police officer in Georgia. I know years ago, before the cooling of the earth, when I went through, Colonel Hitchens went through, to teach in each course, you had to have a combination of experience and education back then.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
If you had a college degree, you could have 2 years, and if you had high school diploma, you had to have 4 or 6 years experience. Is that still a requirement, or is it?
We would like for that to be a requirement, but no, sir, it's not, because of the low pay. It's hard to put that requirement out there to get that clientele that's already got that experience. They're not going to take a pay cut to come to work for us.
Let's see. So what are you asking us for?
Well, we're getting the numbers together in the proposal. I'd like to get those numbers to you later if that's okay.
That would be
as an exact figure. And again, we've been working with OPB and the governor's office trying to get the right numbers out there. So that's the approach we're trying to take. But we've got 5 positions at this time that haven't been filled due to the lack of applicants. One position's been open for 9 months. We've had 2 applicants. One did not pass a background check. The other one laughed at the salary and walked out the door. So that's the dilemma that we're in as far as filling the basic instructor positions to teach.
Able to raise the salary, you may want to think twice about hiring that individual. Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, now I'm not used to the training center folks coming in and not asking for more money for bullets now.
Yes, sir.
And we firmly feel like all our officers ought to be able to shoot real well, particularly when they're around the Capitol.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a handle on where you are as far as your inventory with that, and have you had the opportunity to really get to that point?
Yes, sir. At this time, we are okay on ammunition supply.
Okay. Got plenty of guns to shoot it too, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Representative Rogers.
Director, first of all, congratulations again.
Thank you.
Or condolences, as the case may be.
Yes, sir. Ask me in 6 months.
Just a quick comment. You say you're pulling together the numbers
Yes, sir.
to submit to us. Is there a possibility that you guys have somewhere the numbers as to how many people, what the turnover rate has been like, where we could look at it? I mean, not right now, just when you get those numbers.
Yes, sir.
I think it would be helpful to see, based on the last couple of years, how many people y'all have lost for these reasons, and that way we could see a pattern and may justify it a little bit more if y'all could pull those together.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Corrections.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good
Committee.
afternoon, and I understand that Commissioner Bryson couldn't be with us for other reasons, and I welcome you. So,
Thank you. Thank you. We're on page 30 of 101. We have 3 pages. I will skip the statewide changes and hit the main changes in here for the brevity of time, but obviously we'll try to answer anything you guys may have. And looking at page 30, at 18.2.5, that would be our first main change beyond the statewide changes, and that's $830,815 for a reentry housing program. That money, along with the 5.1 that's noted in the note, ends up being right at $5.9 million. That's tied into our reentry efforts, and it allows us to expand our reentry housing from just parolees to probationers as well. What that is when someone's returning home from our facilities, that will give them 3 months if they qualify at $600 per month for a total of $1,800 in order to get themselves back on their feet. The next item is right below that. It's 18.2.6. And I believe you have Director Neal coming up to talk on it next, but it's combined in our budget, so I will delay that for his presentation. The next change will be the very last item on page 30, and that's 18.5.6. That is funds for hepatitis C, $2.5 million. That's a new standard of care that's come out, and it's a new drug cocktail for hepatitis C. What that does is not everyone who has hepatitis C will have the opportunity to take that drug. They will not qualify. But if they do, it helps put them in permanent remission. It doesn't do away with hepatitis C, but it puts it in a permanent remission status. And you'll see that consistent with the Department of Community Health as far as their funding goes as well.
I believe from your testimony on the amended budget, isn't that about $1,000 a pill? Is that correct?
It is very expensive. It is just around, first of all, it's a 12-week therapy versus a 48-week therapy. And I do not have the cost on here. Can anybody help me in the, Scott? $28 per month, $2,800 per month.
Is it?
On page 31, the first item on the next page is 18.5.7. It's an item that's carrying forward from the amended budget, and it's basically just authorizing language for us to move forward with electronic health records. That'll be a 3-year phase-in. Hopefully this will be our first year of doing that. And obviously that's a big issue as we transport inmates across the state. Moving those inmate medical records is something vital. Also, when we talk about reentering society, that electronic health record will do wonders for them coming back into the streets.
Okay. Let me stop you right there just a second. We've got a couple of questions. Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask you to back up just a little bit on this 18.5.6. Now, I think what you said is this is a new standard of care, and this is did you say a 12-week course of?
It's a 12-week therapy, is my understanding, versus a 48-week therapy.
What is the price on the 48-week therapy?
Sir, we'll have to get that for you. I do not have that with me today.
Is it more or less?
Oh, it's less. Yes, sir. It's a different cocktail. So this is the new drug.
Okay, and I guess I want to understand where this standard of care is coming from.
Yes, sir. I'll have to get you some more information on that based on how it's going across the state for all the hepatitis C. We partner with Georgia Regents University, and I apologize that I don't have a good answer for you today, but I promise you we'll get you one.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I can't really. So this is Regents University. This is medical. What's formerly known as Medical College of Georgia.
Yes,
and
sir.
we're treating these folks 48 weeks on hepatitis C treatment or therapy plan, and then and it's less expensive than how much? $2,800 a month for
I believe it's $28,000 a month for that. Yes, sir.
Now, these folks that had hepatitis C before they came into the Department of Corrections?
It would be a mixture, sir, as we test them inside the system and we find out they have hepatitis C. Yes, sir.
That just seems
Yes,
difficult for me to explain to folks that vote for me or against me in Ringgold and Catoosa County, Georgia, while we're providing $28,000 a month with hepatitis C care for somebody that's in prison.
Yes,
And we
sir.
can have one that's less expensive, and even though it's 48 weeks, that's a difficult policy explanation.
Yes, sir. I understand. We'll get you more information.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Hightower.
So this is 28,000 in a month for one inmate.
That is my understanding, sir.
So if we divide this out, we're talking about 91 inmates.
Yes, sir. You're not talking about hitting many in this. Yes, sir.
2.5 million, 91 inmates. Okay.
Is this something that is mandated by the courts? Is this, I know that
We have
intravenous
not
drug
been
losers
mandated
are-
at this point, to my
Okay.
knowledge. To my knowledge.
Yeah. I know they're very infectious. It comes as a result of
Yes,
individuals'
sir.
drug use and that sort of thing. Representative Coomer.
Just following the same question, line of questions, do we know whether the new, more expensive treatment is any more effective than the older treatment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It puts, it obviously won't do every case, but most of the cases that you use this, it puts it in a permanent remission versus a reoccurring situation where it comes out of remission and continues to have to be treated.
Does it make, as a result, less contagious status with regard to the hepatitis C for the person who's infected?
My understanding is once it's in remission, that infectious situation, obviously, if there's a transfer of fluid and things of that nature, you can transfer the virus. But it's more the health care of the individual that's there and the health issues related to that individual as it's out of remission, just as cancer. I have not seen anyone personally with hepatitis C going in and out, but I have with cancer and seen the remission come in and out. And the health issues related to someone who's dealing with it when it's not in remission is obviously different from when it is in remission.
So under the older treatment, there is a recurrence of the hepatitis even after the treatment?
It can be, yes, sir.
Okay. And if there's a recurrence of the treatment, what kind of, a recurrence of the hepatitis C activity, what kind of expense do we expect to see for caring and treatment for a person who has an active hepatitis C infection who's in a prison system?
It's a very good question. I cannot answer that today, but we'll be glad to get that for you.
I think if we had some kind of comparison between what we're spending and what we'd be saving, that might help the members of the committee be able to feel more comfortable about spending this additional
Absolutely.
money.
I understand and I appreciate that suggestion.
Is this a one-time appropriation, or is it something that's going to be reoccurring, or?
I think it's one of those things that would have to be reoccurring as we continue to grow in the medicine. Just as there's new pharmaceuticals every year, this is one of those new things that's come out and we're seeing across the state.
Representative Hightower.
What population do we have right now that needs this? Because if we run your numbers, we're only getting 91 inmates. So
Yes,
how
sir.
many inmates need this? And if we approve this, I mean, you have an outbreak for whatever
Right.
reason. I mean, this could get out of hand quickly at $28,000 a month.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's more than many people in my district make in a year.
Right. I'll get you a full list of how many current inmates we have with hepatitis C
And does
and where it stands as far as the current treatment versus this new treatment.
Because I want to know how far that's going to get us.
Yes, sir.
You know
I
what
understand.
I mean, what's our bang for the buck on that? And I mean, Representative Coomer, I mean, he's right on point. It's going to be hard pressed for us to say, okay, here, go out and have $2.5 million, and you can't even tell us what we're getting for what we're doing now.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
Go ahead, sir.
The next item, continuing on page 31, would be under the private prisons. There's two items there. The first one is a $2 million recommendation related to a performance-based contract for our 4 private prisons to compete on to join in the governor's efforts on reentry and providing skills in the area of vocational training. That's diesel mechanics and welding. The next item is actually a transfer of $1.5 million from the private prison program to the probation program, and that's to shore up a shortfall of deficits that's in the probation program, and we'll hit that in just a minute right below here. Continuing on into the probation supervision program, 18.8.5 is exactly what I was just discussing. It's the structural deficits in the supplemental budget, the transfer from private prisons along with a transfer from health. This has an additional $598,000 versus that transfer from health because of our health cost, and added together is just over $2 million to shore up that program. 18.8.6 is actually our education initiatives, and when you look at this, when you look at education and vocation throughout this budget, if you recall back to the supplemental, it was about $3 million for education and for vocational. In this budget, when you add up all of the education and vocation, of the $47 million of new dollars recommended, over $12 million is related to education. What this will do is it will provide a GED prep learning center in each of our day reporting centers. In the supplemental budget, we began that process and appreciate your support on that. In this budget, it carries it out to all 15 of our day reporting centers across the state. 18.8.7 is related to our Georgia PRI initiative, which is part of the GOTSR initiative. This will fund 6 probation officers to assist with those high-risk, high-needs offenders who are coming back into the community in our 6 pilot areas, which is Albany, Atlanta, Augusta, Columbus, Macon, and Savannah. 18.8.8 is the private prison transfer that I just mentioned. Looking down into state prisons, the first change outside of the statewide changes is 18.9.5, and it's the continuation of the educational enhancements for vocational and academic programs. It's 48 positions. What that does is it brings back education across our entire system. It will provide 28 of those positions will be teachers and vocational teachers, and 20 of it will be correctional officers to assist in those areas as we expand education. It'll also provide us 10 mobile classrooms across the state for education and for vocational, providing the equipment for the learning labs in there, the computers, curriculum, and software. Flipping to page 32, 18.9.6 is actually to increase our funding for the GED test. It's actually $160 per test. Last year we had 1,100 graduates. Our goal is to increase that over 2,600 this year, and this is the funding in order to do that. 18.9.7 is an item that was supported in the amended budget and continues the funding into the big budget, and that's to provide a welding and diesel mechanic program in our state prisons. That will enable us to provide over 100 welders per year and over 60 diesel mechanics per year.
Let me stop you right there,
Yes, sir.
Representative Hightower.
If you would jump back to 18.8.7, I think you said that it was for 6 new positions. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
What's I'm assuming the number there is with benefits and everything. What's the base salary on those 6?
Scott, can you help me with that, please, sir? The base salary on the 6 probation officers for the GOTSR initiative.
It's $48,000. These are mid-level positions, not.
And that does not include benefits, correct?
The 48 is not. 77.
But the
48 is the base pay, 77 with benefits. Is that right, Scott?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Caldwell.
Yes, since you were on, sorry, I won't pick it back up. You said increase on 9.7, you want $1,287,000 for the state prisons. Why the private prisons back over in 18.7.1 is $2 million?
The hope there is that they can produce through a performance contracting, they can produce more than the 100 welders and 60 diesel mechanics that we're able to produce with the 1.2. So we're going to put it out there and see which program can actually produce the most and what's the most efficient. So that's the goal there.
We don't know. We're just guessing then, and we're going to give the private $2 million, but we're going to keep $1,300,000
thousand in the state.
We're going to put a RFP out for them to bid on a performance contract, and we'll expect them to produce more than we can produce. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yes, sir.
Representative Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many people in the program on the private welders and diesel mechanics versus how many people in the program for the state?
We do
diesel
not
mechanic?
know yet. Kind of the same answer there. We have designed our program to produce 100 welders and 60 diesel mechanics. The $2 million for the private contracts will be put out as a performance contract so that they have to compete against each other and hopefully come in and actually outproduce us would be the goal.
Okay, but I guess this kind of goes to the judge's
Yes, sir.
point is if you were comparing apples to apples, you'd give them the same amount you give the state, wouldn't you?
Well, I believe for
For the same program.
We're having ours. We're having a welding program at one facility and a diesel mechanic at 3. We have 4 private prisons in the state of Georgia. Our hopes is that they can provide a more robust program and produce more folks than we can. And it's a contract that will allow us to put it out for bid and get that result. And I see that I'm not really answering that, so I apologize.
Well, I think you're answering the question.
Okay.
But I just, the philosophical premise that it's based on is, the old saying is, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help, is not worth as much as it is in the private sector.
Well, I don't mean it to sound that way, so that's really not what I'm trying to say, so I apologize there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd also remind members of the committee that if you have questions that you need answered, it doesn't end just here. If you'll go through myself and Brian will certainly get it to the various agencies, and I want to be sure that you understand that I'm committed to getting all your questions answered. So if you need that, we'll get that, and we would ask
Yes, sir.
Ask your agency to provide it in a timely manner.
Absolutely.
Representative Coomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Chairman Weldon's question, I think a really direct way of asking it is, why are you not just giving the same amount to the private prison that you're allocating in your budget proposal to the state prison?
I can't answer that today.
Okay.
The $2 million was the figure that we were hoping to see what we could produce there and expand those programs as much as possible, sir. And I'll have to give you a better answer later.
Is that a completely new program then for the private prisons? That's something we have not done
Yes,
before?
Sir. Yes, sir. We do have one private prison that's a program prison, but it's more on your cognitive skills, your education, things of that nature. None of the 4 prisons there are providing licensed certificates in vocation at this point.
Okay.
And so it's a goal of getting them to participate in our efforts to truly prepare folks to reenter society.
Are you expecting to have some kind of administrative cost above the operating cost, and if so, may that explain in part why you've allocated more than you did for the state prison?
I think we're talking a little bit apples and oranges as far as the program. We're expecting their program to be bigger than the one that we're implementing. We believe they have the facility area to do it. They have the ability to add on to their grounds, and they can do it for less because they're not paying the benefits and things of that nature. So truly, there was never a comparison of this program versus that, other than they would come out with the same certificate. So when they enter back into society, that those are trying to hire welders and diesel mechanics trusted and believed in the certificate they were getting. So while we have already designed ours and laid it out, and we know that we can produce 100 welders and 60 diesel mechanics, I would hope that the $2 million, and obviously I don't think we would move forward if it didn't provide a better return or an equal return on the state's investment. So it's a very valid question. Quite frankly, we just hadn't looked at why 2 million and 2 million. Great question.
Okay.
Just hadn't looked at it that way.
If you could get the committee a little bit more information
Yes,
on that,
sir.
I think it'd help the process.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
All right. 18.9.9 on page 32, I believe, is where we left off. I'm sorry, 18.9.8, and that is to fund 2 charter schools. That's one at our Arundel location for females and one for our Burris location for young males. We have about 2,800 inmates that fit the age criteria of 21 years of age and younger. We have partnered with Mountain Education and Foothills Education to provide those charter schools. So it'll be the first time in our knowledge that the state's actually providing a high school diploma versus a GED in our system. 18.9.9 is a continuation from the amended, just as the charter school is a continuation from the amended that you have supported and appreciate, and that's a GED fast track at 3 of our locations. The goal would be to produce over 480 GED graduates from those locations. Those are folks who have been identified that would be on the fast track. This is 6 hours a day of schooling. This reduces the time frame from a 6 to 9 month program to a 6 to 8 week program. So we believe our return on our investment will be greatly seen in those 3 facilities. 18.9.10 is to create, is one that we're very excited and appreciate the support last year and the support this year. This is a pay increase for our frontline correctional officers. Last year, if you recall, you supported an initial increase going from 24,322 after 1 year of service in our facilities. A correctional officer would jump to 27,970. This second phase of a pay increase is identified for our close security, our tough facilities. As we know, our transitional centers, our minimum security facilities are not the same as a close security facility. But it would identify 14 prisons. It would identify approximately 38 correctional officers, and then it would increase the starting pay to that 27,970 versus having to wait a year. And after 1 year, it would increase the salary to 31,592. So this will actually take those officers who are in the worst of the worst facilities and give them an incentive to be there. As you know, we have one of the highest turnovers, just over 33 to 36%. And we're starting to see an impact from that pay raise last year, as well as the support of going to military job fairs. And we hope that this will take us that next level as far as shoring up our turnover rate.
Stay in this section if we could.
Yes, sir.
Representative Hightower.
On 18.9.8, what are the base salary for the 4 positions that you're creating there?
$18,980.
Just for the,
For the
charter
charter
school.
school.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, can you help me with that? Is that the 2 COs or is that the actual 2 lead teachers? I can't remember on the charter school. Correctional officers. So the Arundel and the Burris, the correctional officer starting pay today is at 24,322, and after 1 year it goes up to 27. Under the new pay plan, it would go to the 27,000 that I just mentioned if approved this year. Is that accurate, Scott? Okay.
So we're on 18.9.8, we're increasing funds for 4 positions. And those 4 positions are getting increased from 27 to 31? Is that what you're saying?
It would go from 24 starting pay to 27, not including benefits for entry-level correctional officer.
Then, and all the rest of that, if I'm looking at this right, the rest of the 481,000 is all for operating expenses?
The 481,000, 270,000 of the 481 is for the technology and laptops and computers and curriculum to get it up and running.
Okay.
The 160, I believe, is for the correctional officers.
Okay. That's right.
And our partnership with the 2 Mountain Education Center and Foothills is around 50,000.
Okay. And then one more jumping back down, and thank you. I just wanted to see
Yes,
what
sir.
that was. Divide
Yes,
out.
sir.
And then on the 18, 9, 10, on the close security, you're saying that we're essentially affecting around 38 officers, correctional officers. Is that right?
3,800 correctional officers.
3,800. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Which is approximately 50% of our frontline correctional officers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
The last item under state prisons is 18.9.11. It's an item also that was in the supplemental budget, and that's moving our residential substance abuse treatment program, RSAT, from a 9-month program to a from a 6-month program to a 9-month program. What that also does, and I believe this committee asked about those awaiting placement in our local jails. We have about 220 females awaiting placement and about 80 males awaiting placement in RSAT placement. This funding will allow us to expand those beds in order to encompass that backlog. And right now we service just over 2,000 beds across the state of Georgia. This will allow us to move into to an additional 2,400 beds or so. Moving on to transitional centers, 18.10.5 is to increase funds to implement the GED prep centers. This is an item that was in the supplemental as well. This will carry out that GED learning center to all 13 of our transitional centers, which houses approximately 2,500 residents and typically flips over twice a year. So you're talking about approximately 5,000 going through those centers. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes those items. We do have some bonds. If you want to cover those, I'd be happy to.
That'd be fine, but any questions from the committee up to this point? Hearing none, if you could, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Our bonds is on page 99 of 101. I'll give you a second to flip there.
Committee doesn't have that in a tracking sheet, but if you could explain it, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Be happy to. Our full bond package, as recommended, is just over $30 million. It's $30,355,000. There's approximately 6 categories that those encompass. The first being emergency repairs and maintenance across the state of Georgia in all our facilities. That's right at $3.5 million, and that's your typical. A washer breaks down, a line breaks, the typical things that you would think about as far as emergency repairs and maintenance across the state. To give you an idea, we have just at $2 billion worth of assets when you look at replacement cost of our facilities. And my understanding is the industry standard is 1 to 2% on those repairs and maintenance, which the $3.5 million has been a consistent level across the years, and we've made it work. It's obviously not that 1 to 2%, and I'm not asking for it, but that gives you an idea of what we've been looking at. The next item would be an additional $1.5 million for cell phone interdiction measures across our system. As you know, we have 3 facilities today that we have put a managed access system in to help us with the cell phone interdiction in our facilities. That is, inmates with cell phones that shouldn't have them. This would enable us to approximately take it to 3 additional sites, this $1.5 million. The next item would be $6.8 million for continued hardening of our facilities. As you're aware, last year you supported, and we greatly appreciated, the hardening of our close security facilities. And what I mean by that is we went in and replaced all the beds, we replaced the lights, we replaced the porcelain sinks with stainless steel, we replaced the locker boxes. Quite frankly, they had all been there for 30 years. They were starting to get weak. They were bending the metal, making things with that metal that we don't want in our facilities, and we appreciate you helping us keep our facilities safe and secure. This $6.8 million will allow us to continue to our big medium facilities, which quite frankly, once we stopped it in our close security, we saw the trend go into our big medium security facilities. So this will enable us to continue that effort. The next item is $5.5 million to continue with our replacement of lock systems across the state, as well as perimeter detention system improvements. As you know, all our fences are wired up, so if someone hits it, that we know that. Those systems are old and continue to have to be replaced, as well as continued maintenance on our locks and controls. The next item is our major repairs and maintenance, and those are your roofs, your kitchen floors, the major things that you have to do across the facilities. and I believe that is 10.4 if I can read my writing here. Scott, is that correct? 10,485,000. Thank you, sir. And the last item in our bond package is a replacement of 112 vehicles, which is $2.5 million. Obviously, when you do get your page, you'll see the debt service portions, which are much less than the numbers I just gave you, so I don't want to confuse you. If you did have it in front of you, those figures that I mentioned are the total cost, and what you'll see on your page is the debt service portion of it. Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation, and obviously I can be happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you, look forward to learning more about what you do, and I hope to come visit you as long as other members of the committee.
Yes, sir, and we'll get you that information that we discussed today.
Appreciate that
Thank you.
very much.
Yep.
We have the Governor's Office of Transition Support and Reentry. I think we see a familiar face coming up. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It is a real honor for me to stand before the most influential and most important committee in the House of Representatives, and honor to be with you today.
If you could repeat that for the speaker, I would appreciate it. Greg.
I'd be happy to, and I'm saying that from experience as well. So, congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I have. Hey, I am not. It is not unusual for me to take a shot at my colleague from Catoosa County, having shared that area for several years with Chairman Weldon. I have just one item in the budget, so I will certainly be brief, and that is 18.2.6. As you know, Governor Deal has been doing some impressive things with criminal justice reform in his time as governor, and the legislature has been a critical partner in helping lead the efforts in criminal justice reform. Last year, he established the Governor's Office of Transition Support and Reentry by executive order, and it's an honor to come before you as director of that office today. One of the things that we do, the primary thing that we do, is we manage the Georgia Prison Reentry Initiative, collaborative effort of all the departments and agencies, and we have the responsibility of helping manage that for the Council on Criminal Justice Reform. And 18.2.6 is reflective of some of the things that we're doing with in the Georgia Prison Reentry Initiative. This increases funds for 5 regional reentry counselors. These are individuals that will be working in the field, going into the prison system to do prison in-reach for individuals in the last portion of their sentences they're preparing to return back to the community. These 5 reentry counselors will play an important role in advancing the Georgia Prison Reentry Initiative. These are also positions that are state funds that are used in matching some of the grant funds that we've pulled down. And I know you've heard discussion about the $6 million in grant funds that we were able to acquire last year in the grant process with BJA. These 5 positions are part of the state match for those funds. Another part of that state match for those funds are the 5 community coordinators. We have local reentry councils that have been established in 6 communities around the state. We will be launching within the next several months the next 5 local community councils, and when those 5 community coordinators come on, they will be also a part of the state match. The grants were written to provide the first year's salary for our community coordinators out of grant funds, with the state picking up the funds after that first year. We also have a coordinator, community coordinator supervisor that we've requested in 18.2.6. As we continue to grow, we will be at 11 councils within just a few months. We'll be at 16 councils next year, and we feel it's important to have someone on the state level that's supervising and coordinating those community coordinators' work in the field. We're also asking for a housing coordinator position as well to support the Governor's Office. You approved 5 housing coordinator positions last year, and we appreciate that very much. All of these items are a continuation of the amended budget that you have already approved. We thank you for your support there. We look forward to your continued support and working with you as we continue moving this Georgia Prison Reentry Initiative forward. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions from my esteemed colleagues.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, I want to thank you personally. I watched the good work you did when you were in the House. And, you know, we say when you see a turtle on top of a post, he didn't get there by himself. And that's the way I personally feel about you. But I also spent a life locking people up and then dealing with people in court and other things. And I truly, deeply believe that what this governor has done and what his staff has done is going to pay benefits, and we're going to be a model for the rest of the country. I deeply believe that, and I praise you and cheer you on for your efforts, and hope you have continued success.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor working with you all, and the departments and agencies that are working with this initiative have stepped up and followed the governor's lead, and it's been impressive to watch, and quite frankly, the entire country's watching what we're doing here in Georgia, and just honored to be a part of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Pardons and paroles, I think, up next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I, too, will be brief and speak directly to the items on the tracking sheet that you have in front of you. My name is Michael Nell. I serve as the Executive Director of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. Beginning on page 64 of 101, each of these programs have increases for retirement and merit adjustments. Those are reflected in the first two lines of each program, customary increases. Also, in our...
Excuse me a second, sir.
Yes,
That's
sir.
section 34 of your tracking sheet. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Also, there are standard adjustments for DOAS and Georgia Teamworks in board administration and parole supervision. The only real agency add is parole supervision for the annualization of the reentry coordinator positions. There are 6 identified for intensive parole supervision in the Georgia prisoner reentry sites. Additionally, there's $75,000 for a risk assessment validation. This assessment was last validated in 2008. A couple of things. It's time, usually every 5 years you want to do that, but also the prison and parole population, which it was normed on in 2008, has changed significantly. So we want to make sure we have it normed on the current prison population as well as parole population.
Could you give me a little bit more detail on that? Exactly explain the risk assessment.
Yes, sir.
Exactly what it does.
I will, sir. What the risk assessment does is it identifies the risk and need of the offender, the criminogenic risk and need, and based on that is where you derive the supervision level from. You also identify their needs. Basically, it's the concrete basis for a case plan. Mm-hmm. And you always, by industry standards, about every 5 to 7 years, you want to have that recalibrated, especially when your populations are changing in dynamics. You know as well as I do, you have more violent folks going to prison now. In fact, the prison population violence category has gone from, I believe, mid 50-something% to about 64%. Mm-hmm. Well, what we do is take a look in. That's going to become our future customers. So we want to make sure we have the most update, validated, and proper assessment for that offender population.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Moving on to the page 100 of 101, specifically line 50.2.3, 65. There is 765,000 total. What you reflect in your sheet, I believe, would be 177,000 in debt service for bonds for 34 replacement vehicles in our fleet.
Yeah, we don't have that in the tracking sheets. You're talking about the bonds, correct?
Bonds,
okay.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah. Representative Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you direct me where that would be in the governor's budget that he provided to us? I'm not sure where that's located.
Are you talking about the bonds, sir?
Yes. Is that not in here?
It's in section 50. I don't know quite candidly, sir, if it is or not. It's under general obligation debt sinking fund, section 50
okay.
on.
Okay. Thank you.
I've only read that 3 times, sir, and I can't.
I apologize. I can certainly get you a reference point if need be.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. On the recalibration, when you combine, do you anticipate when you're combining pardons and paroles that you'll have to recalibrate? Is that, I was trying to pull this out of my brain housing group on that. I had a question way
Yes,
back.
sir. Good question. And anything we are doing now that we're about to put money into, we want to make sure it's going to be valid, and it is, because when you do the validation, you do it on the specific offender population. So that's why this would be just important then as it would 2 and 3 and 4 years from now, because it is actually going to be on the parole population, which is a different subset than the probation population and certainly the juvenile population.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions from any other member? Hearing none. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I'll be brief. My name is Jacqueline Bunn, and I'm the Executive Director of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. I have Judge Jack Partain here with me today. He's the Chairman of the Accountability Courts Funding Committee, and I also have my Deputy, Stephen Hatfield. Our budget recommendations for FY16 are on page 57 of the tracking sheet. And the most significant changes to our FY16 budget are related to accountability courts. So
Which section is that? I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off there.
29.
29, okay. We're having to shift around here, so bear with us a little
I understand.
bit. There we go.
I'll slow down.
Okay, I'm with you
Okay.
now.
Okay, and I have,
29.5.
all right.
Okay.
Judge Partain is here to discuss the progress of the accountability courts and the changes that are proposed.
Your Honor, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here, distinguished committee members. Let me tell you a little bit about accountability courts, what we've been doing in the last few years, particularly this past year. The Accountability Court Funding Committee has provided grants in the last year to 113 accountability courts here in Georgia. That is up from 101 in FY14, and we anticipate 13 more courts in FY16. The accountability courts throughout Georgia service about a little over 5,000 participants per month. And in this past year, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council has obtained a grant, which is really great, $1.5 million to be spread over 3 years, which will increase the capacity of veterans courts that are currently funded through the states. So we'll get a little relief from the federal grant because of the good work of the CJCC in getting that federal grant for veterans courts, and I would anticipate we'll have up and running 10 veterans courts in the state of Georgia as a result of that grant. We've also had 13 training sessions in FY15, and since the inception of the committee, we've had 41 training sessions. We have one of the best training programs. Well, it is the best training program, in my opinion, that accountability courts have ever had in the state of Georgia. If you go to page 57 of the budget document, track sheet line 29.5.4, it deals with a $450,000 increase for funding. This is an agreement between the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, DBHDD, and it is to provide fidelity reviews on treatment providers and also 2 mental health liaison positions to coordinate treatment between the agency and the courts. This will be managed by the DBHDD, and the need there is because we have not created a model for treatment providers in the state. which we need to do. I mean, if we're employing hundreds of treatment providers, and so we need to provide a model for them. And so this is the purpose behind this request. The two pilot positions would serve as liaison between the mental health courts and the CSBs to ensure a proper and timely delivery of services. If you move now to track sheet line number 29.5.5, that request $981,000 to provide transportation services, and that's to be managed by the Department of Corrections. And this would be for offenders to attend treatment. That's one of the biggest barriers to participants entering accountability courts is the fact they don't have transportation. And of course, it's not as big a problem in the metro areas, but it's a huge problem in the rural areas. And so that's what that is. And then if you move on to 29.56 through 29.5.10, this is about $2.5 million to expand the capacity of the 113 accountability courts that I just mentioned, and that would help in creating additional adult felony drug courts, family dependency courts, mental health courts, and veterans courts. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one from the chair on your 10 veterans courts. Where are they going to be? Do you know?
The physical location?
Yes.
Okay. Can you get me that?
I should know that already. I don't. I have a deep interest in the veterans courts, and I was just wondering, Your Honor.
I can't remember all 10 off the top of my head, but there's one in Fulton, two in Hall, one in Appalachian Circuit, one in Muskogee, one in Macon, I believe. That could be one in Macon. But I can get you a full list.
I'm mostly concerned along the coast of Georgia. We have a very heavy veteran population down there.
Here we go. The Appalachian Circuit, Savannah, Chatham County, Fulton County, Muskogee County, the Western Circuit are the existing ones.
Correct.
And then the new ones will be Gwinnett, Augusta, Cayuga, Talagua, and Bibb.
Thank you. Thank you much. Representative Rogers. I'm sorry, Representative Coomer.
I don't know whether to be offended by that confusion or not. I let it slide for now. My question is on 29.5.4, the $450,000 line item. Is that amount reflective of the amount of grant you're receiving, or how did you reach that amount, the $450,000?
Well, that is what we had meetings with Commissioner Berry and with Joe Hood, and that is the amount of money that they think would be necessary to provide the reviews that we think are needed, and also the two pilot positions for the liaison. So that's to cover those.
So then, I guess drilling down a little bit, can you break out how you what's included in the 450? I'm not sure, because I mean it's a nice round number. Is that an estimate, or?
It's an estimate that, like I said, Joe Hood and the commissioner came up with, and he was here earlier. I don't know what happened to Joe, but I think I told him I was going to ask him, call on him, and he left. But if I got questions like this.
I'll say for the positions, it's a position that's going to be written in conjunction with the funding committee and DPHDE, and there's not yet, we don't know what exactly the salary will be because we're looking for a very specific type of person. So their salary could vary. So I think it is a slight estimate, but we have a range.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
That's all I have.
That's all you have?
Any further questions?
One from the chair, and Judge, you may be able to answer this a little better. We've had some chatter about some training, about $400,000 or so in training. I believe that
well, there are two types of training that we have. our training programs, and our budget is approximately $400,000 for the training that the Accountability Court Funding Committee meets out. There's also training that the Judicial Council AOC handles, and that's called the annual conference.
That's what I was directing it to.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's
okay.
what I was.
The annual conference. And there has been a request from the Judicial Council AOC for this committee, the Accountability Courts Funding Committee, to grant the AOC $300,000 to $450,000 for their conference. And so that's a request that's on the table. I just learned of that recently. But so that's a different 400,000.
Well, my question would be, would that come out of the accountability courts? And number one, can you do it legally? Number two, would that come out of funding for our accountability courts? Because I know personally I take it a little bit of umbrage. I want my accountability courts supported, which is much more important, at least to the chair of this committee, than a conference would be. I'd love to hear about that.
We try to, as far as accountability courts funding committee is concerned, we try to grant as much money to the courts as we possibly can. In FY15, we granted approximately $14 million to the courts. Training was $400,000 of that. Of course, that's to the courts too, because you have to train the courts. And then we had admin and committee expenses. But that's what our objective is to get as much money as we can to the actual courts. Get the money out in the field. So
training is one thing, conference is another. I just want to be sure that the funds are being directed where they should be directed, and for the purpose that that very important purpose that is the accountability courts and the good functioning of that, especially the veterans courts, Judge. Very sensitive about that. Anyway, I just wanted to ask you that.
And you mentioned the fact of legality. I can't answer that question. I don't know. I mean, we try to go by the budget document as closely as we can. I mean, we do go by. I shouldn't say we try. We do go by the budget document as closely as we can. So.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. That's
no,
just something.
no. I appreciate it. Any other question? I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Questions from the committee?
Okay.
Hearing none, thank you, and thank you for what you do.
All right, so to wrap up CJCC's FY16 budget recommendation, if you look on line 29.5.12, this is an increase of $1,120,000 for increasing the capacity of the current juvenile justice incentive grant programs. This brings the total for that program to $7,370,000. And also, finally, you'll see a new program heading on line 29.6.1, and that's the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council Family Violence, with a line item for $11.8 million. These are the state funds for the domestic violence and sexual assault shelters, which were previously held by the Department of Human Services and administered by the Governor's Office of Children and Family, or GOSIF. CJCC is presently administering these grants through an MOU with DHS, and the transfer from DHS will improve the efficiency of the distribution for the recipients. These funds are exclusively for grants to agencies and it's set aside in a new program in order to allow them to be readily identified and isolated to their purpose in the budget so they don't get mixed in with other funds. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? For the chair on 29.5.12, could you help educate me a little bit more detail on what that program actually does? I know it helps communities to create and utilize their community-based options. I was just trying to find out a little bit more detail as to how.
Yeah, that's for the Juvenile Justice Incentive Grant Program. It's the goal is to not have as many commitments to DJJ, so less children locked up. So it's increased over the past 2 fiscal years to try to expand the capacity of the counties that we serve. The counties that we serve are represent a little over 70% of the at-risk population. And there's some other ads in the DJJ budget that address the rest of the state, because those other counties don't have enough commitments to actually constitute a full program. So DJJ did a RFP to enlist service providers to give services to the rest of the state so we have full coverage. It's just we're not able to do that as well as DJJ is for the rest of the rural areas.
I see. Representative Hightower.
Hey, how you doing this evening?
Excellent.
29.6.1, I know that those funds, obviously, they're not reflected in our past budget because this was obviously in a different budget, the Department of Human Services. And I was just talking with Brian, what did you ask for last year, though, when you were with DHS? What did you receive last year? Because we can't see that here, so what did you receive last year? Or what did they receive last year?
They received 11.8. It's being administered by us through an MOU with them.
Okay.
So we have the money that flows through us. It's just with the administrative actions of having to contract with DHS and request payment from DHS. We spoke with them and spoke with OPB about just giving that money directly appropriated to us to not have to deal with the administrative.
All right. So
To avoid delay, because it would take another month or so just to get the process going.
Sure, and I see that it's more efficient and it's faster. With that said, though, if you got 11.8 last year, and we're more efficient now, why are you still needing 11.8 here?
That entire 11.8 is granted out to programs.
Okay.
So that's no administrative fund.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I need. Thank you.
Right.
Representative Coomer.
Just to follow on that point, isn't it true that the increased efficiency is in terms of getting the money to the place of need faster? Is that the efficiency you're describing?
That's the efficiency we're really talking about.
And wouldn't this issue of funding being managed by your department, wouldn't it be a great idea for a bill separate from the appropriations bill? And perhaps even there may be even members of this committee who would sign on to such a bill and help you out with that in future years. House Bill 263. Coming to a juvenile justice committee near you.
Yes, indeed.
It's always amazing to the chair what leaks we go to. Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Well, Chair would like to thank the committee, and if you have any questions, please get them submitted, and we'll continue with the next week with the courts again. Thank you, Judge. You're adjourned.